Watching movies and TV in bed is great, but having a giant screen in a bedroom doesn't always fit with the ideal interior design scheme. We made a DIY reversible screen that's a painting on one side and a 64-inch wide screen on the other. This allows our LG CineBeam projector to transform the bedroom into a home theater or just dramatically transform the aesthetic environment of the room itself. Let's start by making this reversible painting and screen. We're going to make 2 frames the same size out of pine, and then stretch canvas or fabric over them just as you would for any traditional artist painting canvas. I cut the pine using my circular saw, guided by my Kreg portable crosscut. I'm using the Kreg 520 Pro pocket hole jig, and it's fantastic for this type of application. It allows me to put 1 or 2 pocket holes really quickly into the pine. From there, I can just clamp the pieces down to a flat board and drive in the screws. In addition to being used for painting, these frames would also make excellent acoustical panels. It only took me about 15 minutes to make each one of these frames. I'm going to reinforce the corners with 1/4 inch thick plywood. I used my Kreg straight edge guide to cut a piece that was about 10 to 11 inches wide. I then cut triangular shaped pieces that I could use to reinforce all the corners. Now we could use this to stretch the canvas on right now, but these 1.5 inch wide pieces of pine would leave a little bit of a silhouetted outline against the canvas. So we're going to wrap the perimeter with another layer of pine, but this time we're going to change the orientation. This way only a 3/4 inch wide perimeter will be touching the front faces of the canvas. I'm using a select clear pine that has no knots, which makes it a bit pricey. You could use plywood for this application, but that would add some weight. For the canvas screen, we're just using typical artist canvas, and we're going to gesso it to make the screen a little bit wider. This was my first time stretching canvas, and it was a lot easier than I expected. I used these handy little pliers to get a grip and just stapled it in place. I started with the middles and just kept working my way around, stretching it to sort of create a diamond-shaped pattern as I worked towards the corners. The strength of the reinforced frame came in handy because it really let me pull the canvas tight and avoid all the wrinkles that I was afraid of. This project is for the painter Alex Maceda, and for this room she wanted a painting that was going to be done on linen, and so this material was a little bit thicker, but stretching it was equally easy. Alex did a painting on the linen and gessoed the canvas. Alex does a variety of abstract paintings, and there's a link to her Instagram in the description below. I cut some additional pieces of pine that would create a border around the 2 canvases and allow me to screw them together. This layer of pine was just 2.5 inches wide, so it allows the canvas screen to sit proud of this layer. I then added 2 3.5 inch wide pieces of pine to either side of the frame. For the swinging and sliding mechanism, I'm going to make custom hardware. I had some scrap steel tube, and I just cut some 3-inch long lengths. I drilled some holes that will allow the bolts to pivot, and then cut these pieces in half. I drilled 4 additional holes that will allow me to attach this steel to the perimeter pine frame. I used a flap disc to round over all the sharp edges, and then switched to a brass wire brush to clean up the steel and also give it a nice brass plated finish. The friction produces heat, and you get a nice thin real brass coating on top of the steel. I screwed the brackets in place and then used large 1.25 inch diameter washers to create a disc on these 1/4 inch diameter bolts that will slide in the track. The tracks and perimeter frame are going to be made out of 2x6 cedar. Cedar is one of my favorite materials to work with. It has a great color, it holds up well indoors or outdoors, and is about as premium as you can get for a soft wood. The 2x6s came with a radius around the edge, so I just used my saw stop table saw to rip those off. I cut my pieces to width, and then remove the riving knife and set the blade to about 3/4 of an inch high and cut a 3/4 by 3/4 inch notch out of the corners. 2x6s at this length can flex a little bit, so I used a biscuit joiner not so much to improve the strength of the connection, but just to give me a good point of alignment as I glued and screwed the pieces together. I used some 1/2-inch thick scraps of MDF as spacers as I clamped the two sides of the track together to make sure that line down the middle was nice and consistent. I had some overhangs on this assembly, but I was careful with my screw placement so that I could just run the whole piece through the table saw to trim everything nice and flush. I sanded all the pieces using my orbital sander. I started at 100 grit and worked my way up to 220. For Cedar, I really like Maker Brand's Simple Finish. It's a plant-based oil and wax finish, and it really brings out the warm tones of the cedar. I placed the tracks on either side of the canvas screen and then took a field measure so that I could cut the vertical supports. I placed the bolts into the tracks and then screwed on the end supports. I added an additional 2x6 inside the frame just to give the corners a little extra rigidity. I used my stud finder to find the locations of the structural members in the wall. Then we brought in the entire frame, checked it to make sure it was level, and then drove screws through the frame, through the gypsum board, and into the structural members. I used some additional nuts and washers around the brackets so that on the pivoting side of the screen, about half the weight is held by the upper bolt. LG is my favorite brand for home entertainment technology. I've used their OLED TV for years and was really excited to check out their projectors. This is an LG Synbeam Full HD LED projector and it's fantastic. Despite its portable nature and small size, it offers Full HD with 4-channel LED technology that can go up to a 120-inch screen size. You can easily wirelessly connect through a variety of different options and is an excellent combination of portability and durability. It can with up to a 30,000 hour long lifetime. For me personally, I was sold when I saw the high resolution picture quality even during the daytime with the curtains open. It's a really well-rounded projector that doesn't break the bank, and I'll put a link to it in the description box below. The portability really unlocks a ton of value for this electronic device. We like to set up a quick screen outside just by screwing in a piece of 1/4-inch plywood, and then we can bring this LG projector out and watch Fight Night right by the fire pit. Now this projector is so small and portable that I didn't want to build an elaborate case just for it. Instead, I like the approach of building some other usable furniture that would also be a good home for this specific piece of technology. I cut and sanded some additional pieces of cedar so that I could make a bench using these really nice semi-exact legs in my signature color, Casual Turtle. The bench top will have a 3-inch wide center spine with 2x6s on either side. Once again, I used a biscuit joiner to align the pieces before gluing them up. And I sanded the cedar to 220 grit, wiped off the dust, and then added a heavy coat of Maker Brand's Simple Finish. One of the things I really like about these semi-exact legs, in addition to the fact that they're powder coated and heavy-duty welded steel, is that they have slots for the screw holes, which just makes attaching them a little bit easier with greater flexibility. This is a quick and easy bench that looks nice at the foot of a bed. And to hold the projector itself, I just took some of the scraps and made a nice little protective crate that can hold the projector to project onto the walls, or it can fit into this slot on the top if you want to watch movies on the ceiling. I really love this project. I like the idea that your room can be dominated by decor, but can instantly switch to a home theater for when we all just want to veg out and watch some great content. The teak bed in this bedroom is from a previous video, along with the refinished concrete floors, so be sure to check those out as well. This project really made me think about how underrated projectors are. Not only do they allow you to watch entertainment but then hide all of the devices, which is totally aspirational, they also allow you to set the mood in a room more than a traditional TV, but are still excellent for watching content. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Shout out to LG for sponsoring this video, and look for the links in the description box below. Alright, that's it. Thanks everybody. Bye.